It's been some time now since the release of Resident Evil 3 Remake, and like many fans, I was incredibly excited to see Jill Valentine make her last escape through Raccoon City. Personally, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis 1999 is one of my favorite games in the series, so to see Capcom pick the story back up and give it a second chance just like Resident Evil 2 Remake was a much needed surprise. However, Resident Evil 3 Remake is definitely not the same as Resident Evil 2 Remake and its predecessor, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Depending on who and what aspect of the game you are talking about, you will hear many mixed reviews, and for good reasons. Resident Evil 3 Remake is more of a reimagining than a remake, and that's totally fine. There are pros and cons to any game, and honestly, I see both sides when discussing the issues mentioned about Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now in this review, we're going to mention some key parts in the story, so if you're trying to avoid spoilers, I'd perhaps check out another video. Alright everyone, let's get into this. We start the game in a black and white first person view as Jill Valentine. We finally get to see Jill's apartment. There are also really nice Easter eggs lying around for survival horror fans, like Aya from Parasite Eve being the model on the poster right next to Jill's bed. However, things are not well for Jill. At our first couple of minutes in the game, Jill begins to transform into a zombie in her bathroom. The scene is so powerful. The way it portrays how someone would lose their mobility and consciousness of their body as they turn into the infected was disturbing and original. At this point, a terrified Jill stumbles to the ground. She pulls herself up, finding a handgun near the sink, and with her last bit of humanity, points the gun at her head and pulls the trigger. This scene left me speechless on my first playthrough. Jill and many other Resident Evil characters are always portrayed as strong and unfazed by the horrors they see. So to see one of the strongest characters in the series battling with such trauma makes them so much more relatable and human. I almost wanted to give Jill a hug, maybe another beer. Oh yeah, Jill drinks a lot of beer and eats a lot of donuts. She's the best. However, this is just another nightmare Jill has been having as she awakens in her apartment at her desk. We see her calendar and hear her comment how she only has 3 more days before she leaves town. This time we can actually interact with the items and files in Jill's apartment, unlike in the original where we never got to see Jill's apartment. We see that Jill has continued her investigation on Umbrella despite her being suspended. As we get to finish looking around her apartment, we get a call from Brad, and of course, he's scared, but Brad is warning her to get out of her apartment immediately. Jill agrees, but is then interrupted by,
I don't have time to explain. You gotta get out of there right now!
Alright, let me grab my...
yes, Nemesis is introduced right out the gate in this game. Jill frantically avoids Nemesis's clutches by running through halls, apartments, and fire escapes, but to no avail. Nemesis catches us each time. It's crazy. You eventually have to stagger away through a crumbling exit door to flee Nemesis. This part was so much to take in. In the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis 1999, you start the game leaping out of your burning apartment building. The remake adds this back and then some. This was really cool to see them expand on that and much appreciated, but this is only the beginning to some major story changes. As we stumble away from Nemesis, we meet Brad. Sadly though, Brad is bitten shortly after trying to hold a door shut. Brad sacrifices himself in order for Jill to escape. This was a huge story change, and I can't deny that I wasn't bummed out about this. Brad in the original is killed by Nemesis, and it's one of the best scenes in the original game. It took me a minute to warm up to this change. At first, I didn't like it, but after some thought, I think Capcom wanted to redeem Brad's cowardly behavior from previous games. So yes, Nemesis doesn't kill Brad. I was really looking forward to that scene so much, and I know others were too, but we'll live. As Jill flees through the back of the restaurant, we obtain a handgun and make our way through the streets of Raccoon City. Here, we see a helicopter call out to us to make our way to the top of a nearby building. When entering another building, we see Dario Rosso. Man, I was kind of excited to see this spaz, but it was a little bittersweet. Dario does hide in the truck just like in the original, but that's it. You never get to come back to see this area again. In the original, you could go back and forth through the city and explore areas again. In the remake, this isn't the case. It's way more linear, which for some might be a great thing, but for those who played the original, this was a letdown. That was part of the charm of the game. Running around while trying to backtrack and solve puzzles was a big part of the gameplay. In the original game, you could come back to where Dario Rosso locks himself in the truck and find him being eaten by zombies. In the original, you also find his diary, and it's a nice little touch for his character that wasn't added in the remake. What we get instead is to immediately exit the building to make our way up to the top of another where we can escape via this helicopter. However, remember Nemesis? Well, he's not playing. Nemesis shoots the helicopter out the air with a rocket launcher, leaving Jill stuck at the top of a parking garage with him approaching. Jill is not having this though. Thinking quick on her feet, she jumps in a car and drives right into Nemesis like a badass. This new version of Jill doesn't hold back. Even when Nemesis stops the car and punches through the windshield and starts strangling Jill, she keeps her foot on the gas, driving Nemesis and herself off the edge of the parking garage, smashing Nemesis. But Nemesis gets back up unscathed. Fucked. However, this hunky new improved Carlos shoots Nemesis on top of a car with a rocket launcher, how ironic, to save Jill and down Nemesis. This whole intro was on another level compared to the original. This brought a lot of later content from the original straight out the gate in the first 40 minutes for the remake. I couldn't believe how all this was playing out at first. I was really excited and was thinking to myself, they're going to add a lot of new content. Well, that wasn't the case. We'll go over this in a bit. Jill and Carlos make their way to an underground train station where we meet Mikhail, who I love. They did such a great job on his character. He's like the Russian mercenary grandpa you never knew you wanted. From here, Jill agrees to join their party in order to get the train power up and running so that civilians and the team can escape the city. Our goal is to restore the power, but we have to make our way through city streets and alleys in order to find key items and weapons to get to the substation. At this point is where the gameplay really begins. If you played Resident Evil 2 Remake, then you'll be used to the inventory system. It's almost the exact same, besides some UI design. Crafting ammo has also made its way back, which is something I loved about the old Resident Evil games. When RE2 Remake came out, I felt like Capcom got it right. It seemed so fluid and quick to do. You also get an unbreakable knife, which is really nice, unlike Resident Evil 2 Remake. As we venture to find items, we see the city streets of downtown, seeing callbacks from the original such as explosive barrels and locations, but also lovely add-ons like these electrical boxes that if shot at can stun enemies while you veer past them. Speaking of enemies, the zombies in this game were a little bit of a letdown for me. They were almost the exact same zombies from Resident Evil 2 Remake. On top of this, unlike Resident Evil 2 Remake, these zombies' bodies would disappear completely after downing them. I don't know why this aspect was changed, but it took some immersiveness out of the environment for me. Not trying to nitpick, it was just strange to me. Once finding everything we need to clear the path through the repair shop to make our way to the substation, our next step is to turn on all the breakers to restore power for the train station. Entering the repair shop, we meet Nikolai, who is just like the original, cold and calculated. His redesign is nice, and I didn't see a flat-out bad guy. He looked very normal besides working for the UBCS. His voice actor I think nailed his demeanor too. His original character never gives much away as to why he's in Raccoon City and what his true motives are. After the scene, we head to the substation, meeting old enemies like the Cerberus, and if you pay attention closely, you can see a callback to the original with the chalk drawings on the concrete. After dashing past enemies, we make our way to the sub-power station where we have to turn on the breakers. We see that the breakers are in an area that is covered in a strange parasitic nest that is locked up. However, Jill finds a lockpick from a nearby body. If you play past Resident Evil games with Jill, then you probably remember her having a lockpick. This is one of Jill's specialties she learned in the army. Very convenient. You can decide if you want to backtrack downtown to unlock some items or to venture into the gated nest where the breakers are. I recommend backtracking first. It's one of the few times you get to do this in the game and will help you with later encounters with enemies. When you do eventually unlock this area with the breakers, you are encountered by a nasty enemy and shown one of the grossest scenes in the game. The second you enter the area, a new enemy type emerges, the Drain Deimos. Not to be confused with the Brainsuckers from the original. These are much smaller, but still very deadly. One of these little nasties pins you up and forces a tube-like vessel in Jill's mouth and implants her with eggs. Yes, implants her with eggs. So messed up. You have to immediately use an herb and Jill will then vomit out the dead eggs. Dude, it's weird. Totally sideswiped by it. As you run through the dark maze-like nest to switch on the breakers, you'll need to dodge and shotgun the hell out of these guys. Once all the breakers are switched on, you'll make your way back to the substation and activate the power. In doing so, you'll need to make your way back to the Kite Bros rail building where you got the shotgun in order to set all the rail tracks for the train to escape the city. As we leave the substation to do so, however, we finally get to meet Nemesis again. Just like Mr. X in Resident Evil 2 Remake, Nemesis smashes through the wall to come and kill Jill. He literally comes out the gate swinging. Depending upon what difficulty you're playing, Nemesis can kill you in about 2-3 hits. At this point in the game, you get to use your souped up dodge mechanic more than ever. This is really helpful against any enemy. If you land the move at the right time during an enemy charge, Jill will roll out the way of the enemy attack, and if you happen to land a perfect dodge, you can then slow motion shoot them dead in the face. The original introduced this mechanic on a basic level, but it was difficult to pull off, especially when you're up against Nemesis. In the remake, it's your strongest defense. The dodge mechanic is crucial to get past Nemesis. When Nemesis is chasing Jill, you'll still have other enemies coming at you, so having this mastered will help you save ammo and health, so get the dodge down. If you choose to fight Nemesis, be prepared. Again, he's not to be taken lightly. You can take him down for a brief period of time, and sometimes you'll get rewarded for this by Nemesis dropping a case that you can use to upgrade a weapon. This was great to see them reuse this aspect from the original. You feel so badass taking Nemesis down and then taking his loot. It's wonderful. After maneuvering through city streets to the Kite Bros railway building, you'll solve a simple mapping puzzle for the train tracks to get out the city. Going out the building and back to the donut shop, Jill encounters Nemesis again, but this time we see new ability from him. After walking out the donut shop, we see Nemesis infecting a zombie? Doing so creates a new head on the zombie with tentacles just like Nemesis. We'll have to avoid Nemesis again while dodging these new infected mini-nemies and other normal zombies. Again, dodge should be mastered. After getting back to the underground train station, Jill meets back up with Carlos along with Mikhail, Nikolai, and Tyrell. However, Nemesis shows up again. As the team runs away, Jill shuts the gate on herself in order for the team to escape, explaining Nemesis is after her and that she'll buy them some time. It's here that Nemesis has another quick chase with Jill through a small warehouse area in the train station. Jill gets a chance to say her famous one-liner here, and I wish it wasn't here though. More on this later. We escape Nemesis by shooting an explosive barrel near him. We get just enough time to open a vent and crawl into it, leading us to a sewer. What is up with Resident Evil games and sewers? Seriously though. The sewers in this game is a really short section, but you have to face the 100 gammas. The sewers are perfect for these guys since they need a cool, dark place to thrive. This enemy can be tricky, but if you have the right ammo and good aim, you should be fine. However, these enemies are one-hit kills if they grab you, so keep your distance from them in order to survive. Otherwise, you're fucked. Dodging doesn't really work well with these enemies, well, at least it didn't for me. In the sewers, however, you finally get the grenade launcher. This is one of my favorite weapons in the original. You could craft a lot of interesting ammo types for this weapon, such as flame, freeze, grenade, and acid rounds. In the remake though, you don't get the freeze rounds, but instead get mine rounds. You still get to mix the gunpowders together to create ammo for the grenade launcher, excluding the mine rounds. I do wish the game had more ammo crafting for this weapon. I enjoyed what I could create in the game, I just still wish that there was a little bit more variety for this particular weapon. Once you have found a ladder leading you out of the sewer, guess who's there to meet you again? Yep, Nemesis. He grabs Jill by the head and throws her across a construction site. This time, Nemesis has a giant flamethrower. Jill is then chased by Nemesis while avoiding zombies until she gets to the top of this construction zone. It's here we get our first boss fight. The fight is fairly simple. You need to shoot his gas tank on Nemesis' back while avoiding swings and flame attacks. Once you explode his tank, you'll enter the second phase of the fight, where Nemesis walks a lot faster and is twice as aggressive. Nemesis also has a supercharge that you really need to avoid. His weak spot is his regular on his chest. This covers his heart and will take him down a lot faster when shot at. The shotgun and the grenade launcher are incredibly effective in this fight, but Nemesis can dodge your grenade launcher attacks, so be prepared. After downing Nemesis, Jill jumps off the side of a building, landing on a scalpel, but it starts to break due to the explosion raining down from above where you just fought Nemesis. You fall to the ground safely and continue to make your way back to Carlos and the other UBCS team members. At this point in the game, we are greeted with some RE2 locations, and man, did I love this. Jill finds herself back on a street where the underground parking garage of the RPD is, and also Kendo's gun shop. We make our way to the gun shop where we get to meet the famous gunmaker himself. The scene is interesting, but short. Jill knows Kendo and is very casual with him. In Kendo's original introduction in Resident Evil 2, he is killed off relatively quickly and doesn't make an appearance in Resident Evil 3 besides a letter you find in the RPD. In the remake, Jill tells him about their plan to escape and tries to get him to come along, but he denies her request. The scene is bittersweet. Kendo gets more screen time, but Jill doesn't get to know why Kendo denies her offer. If you played Resident Evil 2 Remake, you'll remember Kendo's daughter is bitten by a zombie and is infected. Kendo lies to Jill, saying he's got other plans, and that's the last of the famous gunsmith. If you go by the door to the room where Kendo walks into after you hear from him, you calmly hear him talking to his dying daughter. I wish Jill could have had a more personal moment with Kendo. The Kendo scene in Resident Evil 2 Remake was very touching and one of the most heart-wrenching in the series. Perhaps Kendo was trying to spare his friend's feelings versus some unknown newbie cop like Leon Kennedy. After Jill makes her way out of Kendo's gun shop, she encounters, you guessed it, Nemesis. However, Nemesis finally has his iconic weapon, a rocket launcher. I was so nervous for this part. In the original, he messes you up a good portion of the game with it. However, in the remake, this Nemesis encounter is more on rails than any other part of the game. You really don't get to fight him in this state. You just run, which honestly didn't bother me too much, but it's just really short. You avoid him enough until he blasts the ground, flying you over a bunch of cars. And then this happens. Capcom. Really? This part was silly, and I thought it was one of the most comedic parts of the game, right next to Jill and Carlos's dialogue. After dodging a giant Mr. Charlie head, jeez, Nemesis comes back to remind you, he's not done, bitch. Dodging his attacks, you eventually meet Carlos, who leads Jill to an area connected to the train station where there are gasoline trucks. He lays a bomb to down Nemesis and blasts the trucks to end the big man. After this, Jill and Carlos have earned each other's respect, and we get to see their chemistry in this game begin to blossom. Their voice actors did such an amazing job conveying their emotions. It's here we get back to the UBCS team, and we are able to board the train to escape. But Carlos isn't coming. Tyrell and him are looking for a specific civilian, while the rest of the team, Nikolai and Mikhail, go with Jill. This is another story change. In the original, everyone who survived would be leaving together. Jill being worried about Carlos is really sweet, and their casual banter and trust in each other make this scene a delight. Again, the voice actors in all the remakes are superb. I like how Jill says, okay. It reminds me of an actual response from someone trying to be sarcastic. It's a nice touch, but the sweetness is short-lived. As we ride the train out the city with the UBCS team and civilians, Mikhail shows his doubts in Nikolai. However, all this would be interrupted because Nemesis comes back yet again for another one. He instantly kills all the civilians in the other part of the train. While Jill expresses her anger, Mikhail sneaks out to the next part of the train car and locks the door on her and Mikhail, just like a rat bastard would. Nemesis then stabs Mikhail through the chest with his tentacles and drags him through the air to the other part of the train where the dead civilians are. But our favorite Russian grandpa comes through and gives Nemesis a parting gift.
Get off my train, shit Sparta!
What a great way to remake a character. With Mikhail's sacrifice, the train derails, knocking Jill unconscious, fading into black. I thought this scene with Mikhail was so cool and an upgrade from the original. He was one of my favorite characters in the game and was only around for maybe 3 scenes. Mikhail, you will be missed. The story switches back to Carlos right after he leaves the train station to look for his new target. Their intel leads them to the RPD. Yep, another major story change. As they enter the back of the RPD like you would playing Resident Evil 2 Remake, they hear a distressed cop calling out.
Brad, stop!
And it's Marvin. Oh snap. When I saw this, I got super excited. Would he reveal more what happened during his time in the RPD? Well, unfortunately no.
Sorry.
I couldn't believe what I just saw. The scene was a complete surprise. We finally get to see how Marvin was bitten, and on top of that, we get to see Brad's last shred of humanity fade into the void of his eyes. It was really heartbreaking. The original though, Nemesis kills Brad brutally, and also, Carl never goes to the RPD. It was supposed to be Jill. I know a lot of fans were on the fence about this scene, but I like this overall. I thought it gave us more of an answer to the original while showcasing more of Marvin's story. The only critique I can give this scene was I wish I had a little bit more time with Marvin, and honestly the same with Kendo. I think it would have been really awesome to see more survivors during this game, even if we don't know what happens to him in the end. However, we just get a little bit of time with Marvin, and it's better than nothing. I just only can wish for more. As we investigate the inside the RPD, Carlos gets to see a small bit of the Resident Evil 2 location. This was nice, and Carlos is packing heat just like before. Carlos gets his lovely CQBR assault rifle and also his own dodge mechanic. However, Carlos's dodge mechanic is a punch to the face. Oh, Carlos. You'll solve some simple puzzles, but you can avoid that if you remember most locker combinations from Resident Evil 2 Remake. Yeah, they're the same, which is okay, but meh. What caught me off guard during this area is the arrival of Lickers. Yep, they are back in this game. However, Carlos can take these guys out easily. Also, this area brings back zombie clearing Carlos had in the original. It's really hard to run out of ammo during his playthrough, and you get so much more zombies depending on what difficulty you're playing as. The scene was a lot of fun and didn't overstay its welcome. You get to see more of the STARS office, and you get callbacks from earlier games like the photo of the Alpha team in Chief Iron's office. Carlos's voice actor was incredible during this scene and made you feel so powerful and like you had nothing to worry about. Once Carlos gets to the STARS office, we get a message from Jill, but things turn ugly really quick, leading us back to our main character. Jill wakes up after the train crash. As we stumble our way out of the train station, we end up near a bridge to one of the best looking locations in the game. Oh wow, I'm so excited to go to the clock tower. We also get this scene.
Bitch can't swim.
Best line in the entire game without a doubt. We have to cross a bridge to make our way here. Jill messages Carlos explaining what happened and how Nikolai betrayed them, but Jill gets interrupted.
Nikolai left us to die.
Wait, what?
What the fuck? Get back!
Bitch can swim, and he is not happy. Jill runs off the bridge to then have our second fight with Nemesis. This fight I really enjoyed. It seemed fair and we got to use our mind rounds on him. In the original game, I would get really frustrated with the Nemesis clock tower fight, but in the remake, I didn't feel this way. First off, Nemesis's form is more animal than humanoid. I wish we'd have gotten more of time with his first form, but sadly we don't. This boss, however, can take a lot of HP from Jill, so dodging again is your friend. Nemesis will run on top of cars, buildings, and the clock tower. Nemesis looks so stunning up there. Like, you go, Nemesis. You look great. Carlos doesn't come to save Jill during this fight, unlike the original. Jill is way more badass in the remake. But as fun as the scene is, this is where the game misses its biggest opportunity. After downing Nemesis' second form, Jill gets infected, so Carlos comes and saves her. From there, we go straight to the hospital. Yep, there's no clock tower level. On top of that, there's no graveyard or gravedigger boss fight. This was my biggest problem for the entire game. Why, Capcom, would you not add this? It makes no sense. I understand trimming down unnecessary story plots, but the clock tower is not one of them. It's one of the most loved levels out of any Resident Evil game. I just couldn't believe it. I honestly got really bummed out by this in the game. I might be overreacting, but I love that level and was really looking forward to it. Oh well, perhaps they'll add a patch in the future. Who knows? Until then, it'll just be a wish of mine. Even though my heart is broken from the missing clock tower level, the hospital level was really enjoyable. What makes this area different from the original is that both Jill and Carlos get to explore this area. First, Carlos is tasked to find a vaccine for Jill while learning that everything Jill said was true. When you play as Jill, you get to bulk up your inventory with more ammo, supplies, and a nice magnum. However, the switch between the two characters is a little divisive with fans. After finding the vaccine, Carlos is tasked to protect Jill and Tyrone from a horde of zombies, Resident Evil 4 cabin style. I didn't mind this part as much, but the zombies are the most unimmersive part about this scene. The zombies explode after downing them, and it's just wacky. This bothered me and seemed similar to Resident Evil 2 Remake Ghost Survivors as the cop trying to survive the horde of zombies in the gas station. This seemed completely reused, and though I don't mind this, it should be better and not the same besides some electrical boxes. Overall, this area isn't bad, especially when you get to meet the Hunter Betas. These are an upgrade from the Hunter Gammas. They are much faster and can kill you pretty quickly, but you can dodge these guys pretty easily. Just avoid getting stuck in the corner by two of them. As Jill is recovering from the vaccine Carlos found for her, Jill has another nightmare. This time, it's Carlos suddenly turning into a zombie and Jill being unable to kill him. Here we see Jill's human side again, and I love when Capcom does this. I really think that a lot of Resident Evil characters need more moments like this. It just helps the story be way more fleshed out and really makes these characters human. She doesn't know if she can be the one that kills the people she cares about from turning into the undead. In doing so, Jill is killed in her own dream. Thankful, she wakes up fine, meeting Tyrone, who tells her of what is happening and that Carlos has left to contact the military. Jill ventures to the hospital to get connected to an underground area that is full of enemies. From here, Jill sees Nikolai and goes after him. I like this area. You got to face all the different enemy types in this game besides Nemesis. It's a lot of fun, along with the nice ammo and weapon upgrades if you look around. Once finding 3 breakers to activate an elevator, you get to go to a computer lab area where you meet up with Tyrell. From here, you get to go to the next location, the Nest 2. However, Tyrell is killed shortly after by Nemesis on our way to Lab 2. Even though I really did like him as a side character, I don't feel like we got to see enough of him either, but it's just another critique I'll have. Perhaps next time, Capcom. The Nest 2 area is similar to the Nest in Resident Evil 2 Remake, except this lab was in charge of making the vaccines for the viruses. This is much different from the original. There is only one puzzle, and for the rest of the level you just collect and survive. The best part about the lab though is the area filled with the BOWs. You get to see tyrants and hunters, which is really cool. You have to backtrack to this area after getting the antigen and adjuvant needed to create a vaccine, during which hunters burst out of their experiment tubes to fight you. I like this, but how badass would it have been if it had been 2 tyrants? If only. Maybe next time, Capcom. Once you make it back to the 2nd floor incubation room, you mix the antigen and the adjuvant with the help of a machine. After a simple puzzle, you get the vaccine. But guess who's back? Nemesis grabs Jill around the neck, pulling her up from the ground, but Jill stabs Nemesis' tentacle with her knife. Nemesis then throws Jill off a ledge where Jill begins to flee the facility. She finds a vent where she crawls away from Nemesis. However, Nemesis catches her on the other side. Damn, he's fast! He grabs Jill by the neck, bringing her closer, but Jill shoots a flammable tank, causing Nemesis to let her go. She tries again to escape, but Nemesis grabs her by the foot and we have to crawl away until other tanks explode. Jill escapes through an elevator to where we continue to search for Nikolai. Jill enters a disposal center where Nemesis is still kicking. He chases Jill until all the railings collapse on them both. Jill drops the vaccine on top of a ledge while dangling from the other side. Here, Nikolai reveals himself. He forces Jill to fight Nemesis, and if she survives, he'll give her the vaccine. As she falls, the third boss fight begins, and honestly, I didn't enjoy this area. Though it had that gritty dark look the original 90s games had, the boss itself was a repeat of the second one you faced earlier. However, this third fight with Nemesis has a couple of different attacks. Depending on what difficulty you're playing, this boss can get a little frustrating. The camera during this fight can get stuck really close on you and Nemesis. During this fight, you have to do a lot of dodging from Nemesis, and bodies are periodically falling into the disposal pit. You have to shoot Nemesis down off of acid tanks that, if done correctly, will electrocute him, allowing you to attack him further. Do this enough and you will end the fight with Carlos smashing Nemesis in the face with a crane. Oh, Carlos. Jill grabs onto the crane and is carried up to safe ground. Carlos then empties all the acid tanks into the pit, where Nemesis squirms in agony. Excellent. Jill, after exiting the disposal center, catches up with Nikolai, who refuses to give her the vaccine. Shocker, didn't see that coming. As they're at a standoff, Nemesis comes back, crashing Jill to the ground while Nikolai escapes with the vaccine. Carlos shows up, only this time Jill asks him to leave and follow after Nikolai. Jill has this and is now ready to face the final form of Nemesis. This final form of Nemesis is an upgrade from the original completely. However, where's the giant prototype railgun? Wait a second. Yes, now this is a level of badassery that only Jill Valentine could pull off. Jill aims this big behemoth at Nemesis, breaking down his outer layer, exposing his head. However, it immediately needs more power after the first shot. Of course, our luck. We need to shoot at acid spewing pouches on his body until they pop. This will down Nemesis, giving you enough time to manually push all the batteries back into place to restore power. In doing so, we get to shoot Nemesis a second time. This downs the beast, but Jill is not done yet. He wanted stars, so Jill's gonna give it to him through the form of a fucking laser.
Come on! Next time, take the fucking hit!
And with that, folks, Nemesis is no more. God, what a way to kill him off. I honestly thought this was a lot better in the remake. However, Jill needed her one-liner, and not back at some weird train station room. Ugh, waste of dialogue. After this mega moment, Jill reaches the top of the facility where the helicopter is, and finds Carlos on the ground. As she is shocked, Nikolai ambushes her. He taunts her with the vaccine by throwing it at her, and then shooting it before she can grab it. God, what a rat bastard. Nikolai then tries to end Jill, but then is tackled by Carlos. Jill, reliving her nightmare, must shoot them both in order to down Nikolai. She hesitantly takes the shot, downing them both, but Carlos is actually okay. From here, Nikolai begs for his life, but Jill refuses. She'll do her own motherfucking research. After which, Jill and Carlos fly away in the helicopter, escaping the hell and witnessing the bombing of Raccoon City. I loved how this looked in the RE engine, but it was also sad to see this new reimagined city bite the dust like its predecessor. Finally, Jill has made her last escape through Raccoon City, and along with it, conquering her fear with her eyes set on taking down Umbrella. This game has so many changes, some good and some bad, but I personally think Capcom did a really great job with these remade characters. Jill and Carlos are really fleshed out, and I love their new looks. Some people have been really digging into the fact that Jill isn't wearing her tube top and miniskirt from the original, but I'm here for the change. Her old look makes no sense on any level. She's a STARS member dealing with trauma from 2 months back. Why would she get dolled up for anyone? Also, I'm sure there's some mod out there that can bring back her original costume. Now, Capcom did have a version of this, but it was a skirt and not a skirt, and for some fans, that wasn't enough. However, Carlos's new look is a knock out the park. I love everything about it. His hair, his clothes, his demeanor, everything was great. He's charming yet still a badass. All the voice actors were excellent in their roles, and they gave the characters a new light. Guys, great job on that. Literally loved it. However, a missed opportunity for a character was unfortunately Nemesis. Like, how is Mr. X more scary than Nemesis? Some people didn't like Nemesis's new look, but I think it made more sense for him in the end. He looks more like a manufactured beast. I mean, Umbrella doesn't really expect him to come back. Why dress him up in a full leather suit? The plastic bag material covered in caution tape made him look more massive. Perhaps they didn't have time to fit his body with clothes. He was sent to do a job. Now, it doesn't really explain why Mr. X has a hat and a full suit, but I'll leave it for you to figure out. Perhaps he's just a fashionista. Where his character failed was his overall appearance in the game. He wasn't chasing Jill in the same capacity as the original. I mean, Nemesis is on your ass in the 1998 version, and it's rough. Having a more open-ended Raccoon City gave Nemesis more chances to chase you. The remake's linear level design takes away from his hunter-like presence, and that's a shame. In the original, you never knew if Nemesis was going to pop up out of nowhere. It made him really threatening. It seems like Resident Evil 2 Remake Mr. X had better hunting skills than Nemesis, and I don't get why. Nemesis can run after you, and we really don't get to see much of that in the remake as we did in the original. I think having a patch of Nemesis in more areas would help this issue, but again, who knows. Speaking of lacking details, let's not forget about the mercenary mode. People love this about the original. This was an in-game challenge mode where players play as mercenaries in Resident Evil 3 and beat time challenges to get new infinite weapons to use in their next main story run. You got to play as Carlos, Nikolai, and Mikhail, rest in peace Grandpa, where you can save civilians and earn some cash along the way. It was really fun and would have been a great add-on to the remake. This gave the game a lot of replay value for the original. Missing this alongside the clock tower, graveyard, and the gravedigger is disappointing. I know they added Project Resistance as a free game to go along with the remake, but I think fans, both old and new, would have appreciated having the Mercenaries mode over the Resistance. That's just my opinion, and I can't speak for everyone though. What Resident Evil 3 Remake got right though, was bringing back the iconic soundtrack. The music in this game is gorgeous, especially the save room and boss fight music. I did love how 2 went with a more ambient background noise, but I did miss the music. Resident Evil 3 Remake brought this back and did it right. Also, Resident Evil 3 Remake sprinkled a lot of little lore into this game. There are lots of little notes and journals to find, giving more life into the downfall of Raccoon City. Yes, some characters' notes get lost from the original, but you get a lot of last-minute writers in this game. The nurse journal hit close to home for me, especially during these crazy times. It made you really feel for the civilians in this game. Capcom should include more details like this in their games. I think it helps really flesh out the environments in a very simple way. Overall, this game has me feeling very conflicted. If you're playing this for the first time and have never played the original, then I think you're in for a treat. If you're a returning player, I hate to say you'll feel disappointed at times, but we'll still enjoy the reimagining. A lot of people played the remake didn't get the same feeling as they did from the original, and honestly, that's to be expected. Nothing can compare to our first playthrough of a game we love. Our nostalgia of games from our past make us feel very defensive over them, and I get that. I just wish Capcom would have understood this when recreating Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 3 Remake is by far a bad game, and I would definitely recommend playing it, especially if you enjoyed Resident Evil 2 Remake. Though this game was lacking in puzzles and original content, I'm still glad I got to play as Jill Valentine again on her last escape through Raccoon City. And for that, Capcom, I'm really thankful. Also, if the rumors are true about another remake, please take your time with it. We can wait. Don't cut content unless absolutely necessary. I would love to see a Code Veronica remake, by the way. In all, I would give this game a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it was still a joy to play. You'll have to check it out for yourselves though, guys, but I definitely recommend giving it a shot. Everyone, please be safe out there, and thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Until next time, I love you, mean it. Bye! Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Side Eye Gaming. I just wanted to shout out all my Twitch followers and supporters for literally helping me get to this point. Without you guys, I don't think I could have done this, and it means the world to me to have you here. I wish I could just do this all the time for you guys, and maybe one day we'll get there. But till then though, I just want to say thanks personally from the bottom of my heart. Y'all mean the world to me. Be safe out there. This is Trace signing off. Have a good night, guys.